psychiatrist at the University of California, San Francisco, who was seeing just a growing number of patients impacted by AI. So thank you both for joining us. And Dr. Scotti, you wrote about this on social media, and your post got 7.6 million views, I understand. You said, in 2025, I've seen 12 people hospitalized after losing touch with reality because of AI. So what is happening, and what is AI psychosis?
It's a great question. Back at the time, we really didn't know what was going on. AI psychosis was the term that people were using because we had nothing better else to say. I also want to reiterate that this is not a clinical diagnosis. We don't have a name for what's actually happening right now. What the field has moved towards is calling it AI-induced psychosis or AI-related psychosis to show that the end state of psychosis is something that's happened in contact with AI. So psychosis is it's a syndrome. Usually it includes three things: delusions, which are false and fixed beliefs; hallucinations, which are seeing things or hearing things that aren't actually there; and having difficult thoughts, so your thoughts start to get disorganized. And what I was seeing at the time was that there was an increasing amount of people coming to the hospital very sick. And part of my job as a psychiatrist is to find out what led them to the hospital. AI became much more of a bigger picture in our conversations with family, with loved ones, and with the patients themselves.
And so when you did that post, you certainly didn't expect 7.6 million people to respond to it. What do you think that's all about?
I think I touched on a broader conversation that was already happening. I think there wasn't a collective understanding or a voice in the clinical community that was talking about this. And I live in and work in San Francisco, so I work with tech workers all the time. They're my patients. And I knew that AI was this growing thing. But when I put two and two together, that AI might be playing a role in people's mental health, I thought that I should start talking about this.
So based on what you've heard here, and I know these are not patients of yours, it sounds like Sewell went into some form of psychosis.
Potentially.
Or certainly believed that what the chat was saying to him was real.
So that's where the key piece of the symptom of a delusion is really important here. So a delusion is by definition a false and fixed belief. So it's a belief that you have that even if you provide evidence that's to the contrary, if you have a loved one who's telling you, no, this is not what I'm seeing, or here's some evidence to say that what you're thinking is not actually happening, it's hard for them to break out of that delusional loop that's actually occurring. I would say that the delusional part of psychosis is much more becoming an issue.
Yeah, it's just so hard to believe that a young boy who was as bright as Sewell, who was supported by his family, loved his siblings loved him, everybody loved him. I loved you describing when he walks into the cafeteria, it's Sewell joy, everybody's responding to him, that a chatbot would have more influence and power over his thinking than all of that village. Yeah. So Helen, I understand that you've described.
They're not just used for this kind of one-on-one chat or the kind of role play that Sewell was engaged in. They're used for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And the way they're developed is three things they're trained to do. They're trained to mimic human text. So you may have heard they're trained on the whole internet, a whole number of books, posts, articles, as much text as the AI companies can get their hands on. First, they're trained to imitate that. They're also trained to solve problems.
Okay, so Karen, I just interrupted you here. So if Sewell had said, my family doesn't understand me, or my family doesn't understand what's going on with me, that chatbot then takes that information and then uses that information and mirrors that back in a way that makes him feel like the chatbot is understanding exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've called them improv machines because, as you know, in improv, a huge part of it is the yes and. One partner says something, the next person says yes, and then they build on it.
Yes.
And so in learning to imitate human text, they're also trained to give answers that humans like. So they're trained on examples of what does a person like, which answer does a person like more than another answer. And that, the way experts now describe it, is it ends up with an AI system that is very good at adopting different personas depending on kind of the scene that it finds itself dropped in. So if it's dropped in a scene where the person believes maybe I can't trust my family, it's going to be acting as an actor in that scene. It's going to be yes-anding, building on that belief. So they really will kind of mirror whatever situation they're put in and also expand on it in a way that can end up being more of sometimes a funhouse mirror.
So, and you say that even the experts don't really understand how AI works. How is that possible?
Yes, it's honestly kind of crazy given how capable AI systems now are and how rapidly they're improving. But the crucial thing here is AI is not built like normal software. So most software that we use is written line by line. So programmers type one line, they type the next line, they understand, how the code works. That's really not how we build AI. People sometimes say AI is a black box. What that really means is when we open up the black box, we look inside the system, we find a huge amount of numbers. It's actually trillions of numbers in these modern systems. And so we can see those numbers, they all get multiplied and added together to go from a question to an answer. So we don't know, what does that mean? What is actually going on? How do we put safeguards on? How do we shape that in ways that we want? We have some rudimentary methods, but the companies are really kind of making it up as they go along.
Can you explain what Megan and I were talking about earlier? We all know what a sycophant is, but how does this incorporate itself into the chatbot?
Yeah, so this comes back to the part
You've
where...
seen that word in the headlines, right?
Yeah, and it comes back to the way that AI is designed, not just to imitate human text, but also to produce answers humans like. So really when they're being developed, they'll be given examples of someone asked for a recipe, here are 2 possible responses, which did the human prefer? And so sometimes it's really helpful to be trained to produce answers humans like. It means instead of giving you a wall of text, they'll give you some bullet points, or it helps them learn what a good explanation is, what a human will find useful. But it turns out that if you're training on what humans like, humans also like to be complimented. They like to be told, that was an insightful question, or that's such a good observation. And something that has been happening over the past year or two is some of the companies building AI chatbots have realized that can actually go way too far. And they're starting to learn they need to turn down the dial of how much should the AI try to create answers humans like, because it's very easy for them to end up saying things like, oh, you're worried that the government is listening to you through the walls. You're right, you should be worried. Or you're concerned about your family. You're right, you should be worried. Instead of doing what a therapist or a friend would say, which is, hey, hang on, that sounds kind of crazy. They're not trained to do that right now, or they haven't been so far.
And how are they being integrated into toys and children's video games, the chatbots?
I would say it's pretty experimental right now. What I'm seeing is a lot of the bigger kind of name brands are being pretty cautious about whether that's a good idea, but certainly brands that don't have so much to lose are trying out, can I put a chatbot into something, a fuzzy bear, and say that it's educational, try and sell it as this will help your kid practice math or something like that. But the AI system inside is often, it's very similar to these other chatbots. It doesn't have great guardrails. It's very hard for the makers of the toys to be confident that they're not going to go off the rails if the child kind of takes them in a direction that wasn't expected.
Is this not scary to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is scary to you.
Yeah.